Good evening, everyone. We'll have apologies first. I've received apologies from councillors Burdis, Craven, Drummond, Margaret Hall, Janet Hunter, Anthony McMullen, Judith Wallace and Brian Burdis. Are there any other apologies for absence? No? Okay. Declarations of interest now. Can I remind members if they have any registrable or non-registrable interests in matters appearing on the agenda and the nature of the interest, they must verbally declare in respect of any items of business to be discussed at this meeting and the nature of such interests. You're also invited to disclose any suspension from the requirement to declare any registrable and or non-registrable interests that have been granted to you in respect of any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should also complete the card and return it to the receptacle located on the desk of the Democratic Services Officer before leaving. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Bell?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On motion 2, I'll be seconding that, and I work for a veterans charity. I also as director of Veterans CIC, and I'm a veteran myself, so I'll declare and I'll hand the card at the end.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Anyone else? I have a declaration to declare motion 3. Yeah. Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry. Councillor Newman.
Yes, Chair, I've got an interest in motion 2 as I'm also a veteran. I'll fill the card out and give it at the end.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Madden. Thank you, Councillor Madden. Councillor Gary Madden.
Also on the same item, manager of Memorial Hall, Wallsend.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Yes, same item. Director and Chief Officer of Justice Prince Community Interest Company based in Long Benton.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Critters.
Thank you, Chair. Same item. Also a Director of Justice Prince Community Interest Company and employed as Development Manager.
Councillor Thurloway.
On motion 3, I work for Parkside Care, which is a social care provider.
Thank you. Councillor John Hunter. Thank you. That's it. I have a motion to declare as well. Motion 3, I have a family member who receives adult social care from the council. We now go on to the minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask the council to confirm these minutes? Thank you. And now we go on to return of councillor-elected Camperdown Ward by-election, which was held on the 9th of September 2021. Can I ask the council to receive the return of the councillor elected for the Camperdown Ward following the by-election held on the 9th of September 2021 and is attached to the council agenda? And can I also congratulate Tracy Hallway and welcome her to the council? We now go on to motions, 5 motions. Can I invite, the first one is from Councillors Brockbank, Bartoli and Bones. Can I invite Councillor Brockbank to move the motion?
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll keep this brief. I hope this motion speaks for itself, really, and hopefully it would receive unanimous support. I've little more to add to what is in the substance of the motion, other than to say that the enormous sacrifice of our service personnel in securing peace in Afghanistan and the equally significant sacrifice of Afghan people in seeking to secure their own future cannot be underestimated. They all have put the needs of others first and the security of the UK before personal comfort, and they are all to be commended. This motion is intended to ensure that North Tyneside Council is prepared to welcome refugees and ensure our service personnel are given the very highest priority in the provision of services. To me, this is not an issue of politics, but one of moral duty. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bartoli, do you wish to second this motion?
I do. I reserve the right to speak as well, please.
Yeah, that's fine. So, on to the substantive debate.
Sorry?
On to the debate now. So.
Can I now invite members to speak to the motion, please? Councillor Johnson, Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for the legal officer as opposed to a... In the legal implications, you state about point 2, about front of the queue. Is it your personal legal opinion that this could end the council up in legal trouble?
I will answer that, Chair. So yes, there is a danger reading the wording of the second bullet point, which is reassure the council that service personnel will be at the front of any queue of service provision, that can be taken as service personnel, whether they are serving or former service personnel, would be treated in advance of anybody else. The danger with that is that not all council services are treated on that basis. Some are assessed on a needs-first basis, and obviously if we provide services not in accordance with the legislation and not in accordance with a needs assessment, where that's the relevant criteria, then we could easily end up in judicial review proceedings. I hope that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to go...
So you continue on with the right to reply. So, sorry, you continue on with... Sorry, I think Councillor Andy Newman.
Councillor Andy Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move an amendment, please.
Read the amendment.
So, yeah, we need to...
Would you like to read the amendment, Councillor Newman?
Yes, I will read, if you give me 2 seconds.
For members' assistance, the amendment is displayed on both screens.
I think that would probably be easier if it's displayed on screen. So thank you, Chair. Whilst I acknowledge that the motion is quite rightly asking the authority to outline its approach to Afghan refugees, there are a number of issues I have with the motion, which is why I felt it needed to be amended. Firstly, I want to address each of the points in the original motion. On support for our armed forces community, North Tyneside Council already offers an exceptional veterans offer. Motion 2 will go into more details of the support that we give, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with asking for our veterans in this most difficult time to be given a little extra consideration. I will also invite Councillor Brockbank if you would want to meet so we can go through the veterans policy that we have and also hear any suggested improvements that he would have, and I would extend that to everybody in the Conservative group. As for Afghan refugees, the authority has already publicly gave assurances that the Afghan refugees will be looked after, but if people want more assurances, again, that's completely acceptable. If we want to ask what the authority will be doing to support Afghan refugees, again, that's completely acceptable. But the question I have, and the question that I'm going to give to everybody in this chamber, is then what? Eligible Afghan refugees will still be left in Afghanistan, many of whom will die, and Afghans who are still in this country at the time of Kabul's fall still don't have assurances on their asylum. The original motion does not address the complex nature of the Afghan refugee crisis. It doesn't highlight the fact that thousands of eligible Afghan refugees were left behind. It doesn't highlight how many of the Afghans in this country are in limbo and could be deported if their asylum is denied. And I do wonder how these people would be greeted at Kabul airport, especially when some of these were Afghan security forces training in the UK. It doesn't address the fact that people who were already in this country and now have asylum have families, wives, children in Afghanistan at risk of imprisonment, torture and death at the hands of the Taliban. In the original motion, we asked that North Tyneside Council outline how we will support Afghan refugees, but every local authority is in the same situation, and it's for our government to show leadership that has unfortunately been lacking during the entirety of the Afghan emergency as they waited 18 months before the final hectic finale that was the Kabul airlift. The professionalism and bravery of our troops stand in pale contrast to the government. It is for our government to outline the support packages for people who will no doubt be suffering from complex psychological issues. The original motion does absolutely nothing to assure the veterans like myself who served in Afghanistan that our sacrifices were not in vain, that there was a purpose to what we were doing out there. And now that that mission has failed, those who served bravely alongside coalition forces will be given protection to themselves and their families, protection that they deserve. As we leave Afghanistan, it is clear that the Taliban have stood firm to their commitment to their beliefs. Should we now not also stand firm in our beliefs? Surely we should now stand firm and show the strength of our values to those who are our enemy. And clearly, the Taliban would like nothing more than us to abandon those Afghan refugees. It is important that we value the Afghan refugees, and we should also show that the United Kingdom will honour its word. That's why amending this motion is so vital. We need the government to offer assurances, just like we need the council to offer assurances. We need them to offer assurances that we will not abandon Afghan refugees or the Afghan people who served side by side with us. And we need our government to highlight the action the government will take, because when all is said and done, if government policy doesn't change, eligible Afghan refugees left behind will still die. And those who poured their heart and soul into Afghanistan, the veterans, the aid workers, the charity workers and the contractors, will still be asking why their sacrifices were wasted.
So you need a seconder for that now.
Sorry?
We need a seconder for the amendment.
Do you have a seconder for your amendment, Councillor?
Councillor Samuel.
Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Chair. There's very little I could add to what the last speaker has said. I mean, he, unlike most of us in this chamber, he actually was in Afghanistan, has experience of the problems as experience of a veteran as well. I would obviously hope that we could do, we all want to support the forces in this chamber, and I hope that we can support the amendment. The only thing I would add is obviously the amendment also improves the issue. We want to give the service personnel as much priority as possible, but we don't want to find them dragged into a court case or a legal challenge or something about the service they get, which is not going to help anybody. So this amendment seeks to improve the motion put forward by Councillor Brockbank, and in the hope that we can still achieve unanimity across this council. Thank you.
Okay, so now it's debate on the amendment.
Can we have anyone to speak on the debate, on the amendment, please? Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for everyone's information, the Armed Forces Covenant states that you should not be disadvantaged by your service. That's a legal requirement, so no local authority should disadvantage anyone by their service. It doesn't say that we have to I think what the amendment said, or the original motion said, be front of the queue, because that would cause problems. What you do is use that as your baseline. I understand maybe why this has been put in. You use that as a baseline, as this council has done, we use that baseline, but then when we can enhance something, we do it. Once we go through due legal process. So that is the actual Armed Forces Covenant, not disadvantaged by service.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Anyone else? Okay.
See anybody else? So you can move to the vote. You have the right to reply for Councillor Newman first, and then vote on the amendment.
Councillor Brockbank, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's deeply regrettable that the spirit of this motion has been jaundiced in the way and presented the way it has. I entirely accept Councillor Newman's broader geopolitical perspective, but what I'm interested in essentially is what North Tyneside is doing. It was a genuinely put forward motion. It's not meant to attack anybody. So I'm slightly disappointed it's been turned into a bit of a political kickabout. I can't support the amendment because I'm more interested in what North Tyneside's going to do and how we're going to welcome those Afghan refugees and service personnel. Turning to the issue of the wording of being at the front of the queue, I would simply say that there certainly wasn't the intention to indicate that there should be any course of action that would lead us open to judicial review. Rather, there should be a very active and positive approach adopted for those who have left service and to be encouraged to access the services that the Council provides. We do know that veterans sometimes are either too proud or not aware of the services to be provided, and that was simply the thrust of the original motion. So it is somewhat disappointing that the folks can't get behind that, but there we are. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brockbank.
Okay, so it's now a vote on the amendment.
We'll now go to the vote on the amendment. All those in favour?
So that's 43, Chair.
Thank you. Those against?
That's 5, Chair. So the amendment is passed and now becomes the substantive motion. So we now move to the debate on the substantive motion, Chair.
So, does anyone wish to speak on the substantive motion? Thank you. Councillor Carl Johnson.
It's just on, really, Councillor Brockman's comments before, on the spirit of this motion. The only amendment we have made to what this council does is to avoid us being in legal trouble. We absolutely support our veterans. We've had a fantastic veterans champion in Gary Bell for many years, and now a fantastic veterans champion in Andy Newman. We've received national recognition for our veterans' work, both cross-party, both in the Labour and Conservative movements. We have amended this motion to absolutely reassure the council that we are doing all these things. But we also do believe, quite clearly, the Home Secretary and the government have to do something as well. So we've left in almost everything in the original motion that refers to what the council is doing. I would just urge all parties to support this. And what's been said in the chamber might be political points, but there's not a single political point in the actual motion, and that's what was written to try and get cross-party support, and we really urge you to support. I know you couldn't support the amendment, but do support the substantive motion, and send that message that North Tyneside Council will absolutely support our veterans. And we'll try our absolute hardest to urge the government to get all those that are currently stuck in Afghanistan and in grave danger out there. I would urge Conservatives to support that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Anyone else?
Councillor Bartoli then. Councillor Rafferty.
Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you. Just I think to echo the points made by Councillor Brockbank, this wasn't meant to be a political football. It's sad it's been turned into that. This motion could easily have been amended with a few lines. It didn't need to criticise the government. In criticising the government, it automatically puts us into a difficult position, which the opposition knew. We could have pulled together on this. And I think if Councillor Newman genuinely cared as much as he seems to care about the Afghan refugees, he would have put his own motion in instead of piggybacking on someone else's.
Councillor Arkley.
Thank you. I think I would say that Councillor Bertoni has actually said everything I would like to have said. And quite honestly, why on earth, we get to a point where it has to be a political point here? I just can't understand. There are myself and others here who have always supported, the armed forces. And we put a lot of things in places when I was mayor, and I know John Harrison and, our current mayor as well. I'm really sad to have seen this and heard what's happened here this evening. I really am. In a way, I think you should be shamed. You really should be. And it's a pity that we can't just work together. And if you do want to have two sides of the council working together, why not speak to each other? That's what you should have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arkley. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Councillor Newman.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. If you'll notice, point 1, 2 and 3 is exactly the same. We're calling on the council to give assurances. So I don't understand why you think that this is a political game. All we've done is we've added a section asking the Home Secretary. Like I said before, this is an issue that's affecting every single council in the country, and it would be nice to see the Home Secretary and the government to show some leadership on this. Like I said at the very beginning of my address, there's nothing wrong with asking for assurances from the council, but it ignores the complexity of the Afghan refugee crisis by simply saying the council has to give assurances. The government needs to give assurances. I'm going to say two more things, which I wasn't going to say, but considering some of the things that have been said. Councillor Bartoli, how do I care about Afghan refugees? Do you want to gauge where I feel about Afghan refugees? I remember standing guard over body bags. In those body bags were not British soldiers, but Afghan soldiers. I stood there guarding body bags. How dare you question how I feel and my support for Afghan refugees? How dare you? And as for saying we should be ashamed, you've just turned around to an Afghan veteran that he should be ashamed because he disagrees with the prescribed narrative from the Conservative Party. How dare you say I should be ashamed for putting this amendment in? How dare you? You've turned around to an Afghan veteran.
Where's your motion?
No. I have got every right to be emotional because you've just said I should be ashamed because I've submitted this motion, this amendment. I am ashamed that you couldn't look at this, realise that I've not changed anything that you wanted to say, but just added that the Home Secretary needs to give some assurances. And I'm deeply ashamed that I'm deeply disappointed in the way that you've acted. Deeply disappointed.
Councillor Bartoli, please don't interrupt people when they're speaking.
Apologies, Chair.
So, vote now, Chair.
Right, we'll now go to the vote. Those in favour of the substantive motion, please raise your hands.
So again, that's 43, Chair.
Those against?
Okay. Those abstaining?
So how many are abstaining?
That's fine. So 7 abstentions.
7 abstentions.
Okay. So the substantive motion is passed.
The substantive motion is passed. I'll learn how to say that by the end of this meeting. Right, we now go on to motion 2. Can I invite Councillor Newman to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I don't believe this motion could be considered controversial, I just want to say North Tyneside Council has always strived to develop exceptional veterans offers. Under the previous Armed Forces Champion Councillor Gary Bell and the elected Norma Redford, North Tyneside Council has developed a veterans offer that has been recognised as exceptional and has been awarded the Gold Award. The veteran offer includes many elements, but these include enhanced housing to ensure that our veterans who have recently left the armed forces can access good quality housing. We have a dedicated outreach officer that not only ensures that members of our armed forces have a single point of contact who they can contact for signposting and advice, but also that the authority has a dedicated worker who's flexible and can develop networks with the local armed forces community and charities. We also offer a guaranteed interview scheme for veterans, which has recently been expanded to include reserve force personnel. However, despite the incredible innovations of this authority, without dedicated ring-fence funding from the government, we're limited on how we can expand and improve this service. Now, whilst I do acknowledge that the Armed Forces Covenant grant system can be beneficial, it does come with some issues. Chief amongst these issues is that funding is not regular and relies on grant funding, and it can sometimes result in services that are not adaptable or flexible. So whilst I acknowledge there are some success stories with the local grants programme, I believe that in order to provide exceptional, flexible local services for our armed forces community, local authorities should receive regular ring-fence funding from the government. Now, I understand that the government has been happy to put funding in a pot for people to bid on, but I would put to the government that use North Tyneside as a trial. Give us the money and we will show you what we can do. The local authorities are often the front line of armed forces support, and by giving us dedicated ring-fence funding, I firmly believe we can improve on the already exceptional work of our officers. My hope is that in the future, all local authorities will receive regular ring-fence funding from the government to support our armed forces community, especially as the Armed Forces Covenant starts its transition into a legal requirement. But for now, I hope everybody in this chamber will agree to this motion and call upon the government to provide us with dedicated ring-fence funding so we can continue to develop and improve the exceptional services already provided by this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Bell, do you wish to second this motion?
Chair, and I'll speak as well. No.
No?
Yeah, I'll do it now, as I get off. Thanks, Andy. I think, firstly, on a note of conciliation, I think all officers and councillors of whatever political creed should be really proud of the offer we offer as a council. It is exceptional. And it was probably all started off under John Harrison, but I think in 2012, if I'm correct, I think Linda signed the Armed Forces Covenant, Linda Hartley. And then we had an officer who was like part-time called Eric Haley, who did a lot of good work. He's now left the authority. Under the leadership of Phil Scott, who's in the back there, who must have got sick of me knocking on his doors one day with some strange schemes I wanted, and he was like, where's this guy come from? But he stuck with us, thank you. Leadership by Norma. In 2013, she said, I wasn't working, so I think she just wanted to give us something to do. She said, go out there and meet people and go where you want to go and promote North Tyneside, which we did. We've got the bronze, silver and eventually the gold Defence Recognition Employers Award. We've got a certificate of merit from the Army. We've got a dedicated armed force officer now who's paid out the HRA budget, not looking for funding for every couple of years or that person, and she's exceptional. She's a reservist as well. As a council, we passed unanimous motions on the nuclear veterans, the compensation, Commonwealth veterans with their visa claims, and on the motion itself about PTSD, the first point, we, as a borough, we're very lucky. We've got Ford Assist at John Murray South Centre, we've got Anxious Minds in Wallsend, Veterans at Ease has got a shop in Whitley Bay, but they have two therapy centres, one in Gateshead, one in South Shields. We're Walking the Wounded have just opened a hub in North Shields. We've got Age UK North Tyneside, which has got money for veterans. We've got the Royal British Legion branch in North Whitley Bay, North Shields and in Forest Hall. And we've got Operation Veteran, which I'm a director of, which I've already declared, in North Shields as well. So we have a full range of services for veterans, either they're suffering from PTSD or they just want to come for a cup of coffee. And what Andy says is a lot of the times all these charities or CICs are fighting for funding and fighting against each other. But it's important that local authorities take the lead sometimes under the Armed Forces Forum, which Andy will chair now. And if we did get funding coming in, which we could direct to our priorities, and I think it was a good idea if the government would possibly use this as a pilot scheme, as they have in the past, for other things like adult social care and education. I think that the Office for Veterans Affairs, which I speak to quite a bit from my job, again, I'll give credit to the Conservative government, at least to open the Offices for Veterans Affairs. Obviously, Johnny Mercer, did he leave or was he pushed left? But and there is a report of some funding gaps, but it's been set up, so it's here, so that's good news for veterans. Veteran suicides are now being recorded by coroners, which is brand new. So there's lots of stuff going on, but I think that local authorities need to be sort of the direction of, and get the money in, find out what we need for our residents, if it's health, or if it's housing, or whatever it is, and then we can direct it to organisations, and then we can also ask for reports, find out where the money's gone, it's not been wasted, because a lot of service charities have folded because of either mismanagement or they've merged. But really, I think we should all just support this motion. I know it's going to cause maybe problems for the opposition because it asks us to contact the Chancellor and Leo Doherty. And Leo Doherty's already been here in North Tyneside because he went to visit Forward Assist. But on the basis of this, I'd recommend everyone vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Please put your hands up. Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bell. I'm pleased to say that the Conservative group will be supporting this motion. Just one sort of comment from me. It's sort of around the motion and is just a suggestion to the administration more than anything. This Remembrance Day will obviously be a poignant one, especially in light of what's happened this year in Afghanistan. And in addition to what the motion asks, please can I ask that the administration currently in this council makes some effort to clean up our war memorials in advance of that Remembrance Sunday, to make sure that across North Tyneside, as we head into November, we have a fitting tribute to all of those who've served our country in all of the wars, including Afghanistan. I know that some of the war memorials, Hawkeys Lane springs to mind, the one in Tynemouth Green, but again across North Tyneside could do with some sort of care of attention, and that might be a really nice way for us as a council to make sure that these veterans get the sort of tributes they deserve this Remembrance Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just reassure Councillor Bones that our memorials are kept in good condition, and always before Remembrance Day they're given extra special care, so be assured that they will be in tip-top condition come 11th of November.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that the memorial at Hawkeys Lane was actually spruced up by residents a few months ago. There's now flower beds and everything, and it's a joy to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Waswater?
In further to Councillor Graham's comments about war memorials, the shocking state that Ersden War Memorial was in to a few weeks ago when we raised it, it's now, thanks to the department, a bit more fitting remembrance for the soldier who died for their life. I'll be supporting this motion. For many in the chamber, it may find it difficult to apprehend military life. Growing up, I was surrounded by family members serving in the armed forces. I had family who were in the Royal Navy, who fought in the Falklands. I've got another cousin who fought for the RAF in Saudi Arabia. And my father is a very proud veteran who previously served in the Black Watch. He's seen active service in the Troubles in Northern Ireland. He served in the former protectorate of the Aden. And finally, he wore the Blueberry as a member of the United Nations peacekeeping force when the island of Cyprus was separated. I myself spent some time at Queen Victoria Military School, which is the only school in the UK to be managed by and funded by the Ministry of Defence. And my father was then stationed to Hong Kong, and obviously they had the garrison over there, and we spent 3 lovely years in the colony. At university, I was involved in the University Officers Training Corps, and my father wanted me to take my commission in the army, but disappointingly for my father, I chose another career path. Veterans' mental health is paramount, and local charities such as Forward Assist and Anxious Minds should be applauded. Everyone should be determined that world-class veterans' mental health care should be available in this country, and we sit on this side of the chamber stand firmly behind our armed forces and our brave service personnel who serve our country. From their work across the country in the front line of the pandemic to operations abroad the world, Britain's armed forces deserve our admiration and gratitude, and I will support the motion.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Can I now invite the move? Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you there. Councillor?
Just very, very briefly, I just think it's worthwhile putting on, not to make this too much of a political love-in, but absolutely the Conservative Group will support this motion, regardless of some of the issues that might present itself. I just want to pay tribute to Councillor Bell and to Councillor Newman as well for their work with the veterans. I think across the piece we can be exceptionally proud of what we do and our commitment to veterans. So I just want to put on record my thanks to the two of them on behalf of the Conservatives.
Thank you, Councillor Brockbank. Anyone else?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say it's not so long ago we spent quite a great deal of money on all our veterans' remembrance and pardon? War memorials. Thank you very much. Much appreciated, Councillor Murray. Okay. However, I think we're all extremely proud of what we do and what our people have done. We meet regularly with British Legion people. We meet regularly with people right across the borough who served and helped us. And I just find it very, very sad, to be quite honest, that you actually think that this council would actually not be proud of the war memorials. What makes you think that? That's rather sad. But what I'm saying, we're extremely proud of our war memorials. And because of the pandemic, right, perhaps they have been left for some time. But I can assure you now, most of our workers are back doing their daily chores. Our war memorials will be brought up to scratch. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. And thanks, Councillor Barry.
Councillor Bartoli?
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak to this motion because I do support the motion, but just on the Mayor's last point, the two war memorials in Tynemouth are in quite a terrible state, so I would appreciate it if the teams get there sooner rather than later, because they definitely need to be cleaned and tidy.
I think that's probably top of our agenda now, to be quite honest, when we look around the borough, to be quite honest, particularly when we're coming to the November celebrations and remembrance services, to be quite honest.
Would anyone else like to speak? No?
Councillor Newman for the
yes. Councillor Newman, you now have the right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief because it is getting unanimous support across the chamber. I do want to pay tribute to the elected mayor and Councillor Gary Bell. I have a number of friends who live in other authorities who are always amazed when I speak about the support packages we have in this authority, and they can't believe that their authorities don't do even half the stuff we do. So I do want to pay tribute to Councillor Gary Bell and the elected mayor. I do want to, again, reach out to the Conservative group like I did at the last meeting and say, look, the last motion, say, look, I will more than happily meet with anybody from the Conservative group and listen to any concerns you have or any suggested improvements you wish to make to the veterans policy that we have. I think this is one of these issues which we shouldn't be political about, and I'm more than happy to meet with you. But I also want to assure you that in the next couple of weeks we are going to be starting the round of meetings to prepare for the Remembrance Parade. So again, if there's any concerns about the state of the war memorials or anything you would like me to take particular attention to, I'm more than happy to hear any suggestions you have. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimously.
Point of order, Chair. Sorry. It was just regarding the rules of procedure. Point 11.8 says that details of reasons for the rejection of any rejected motions will be circulated to all members, and that doesn't seem to have happened for this meeting. I just wondered if that can happen following the meeting, please.
If I can assist, Chair. Details of rejected motions will be circulated to all members. It doesn't necessarily say that they will be circulated before the meeting. It is one of those things that will be dealt with once the meeting is concluded, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we now go to motion 3. Can I invite Councillor Samuel to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. There are two basic themes to this motion. First of all is to draw the Council's attention to the fact that around half of Council spending now is on social care, and that the vast majority of Council tax rises in recent years have been due to the adult social care precept. There's been a marked reluctance to talk about this on the benches opposite, as they present a somewhat different representation of Council funding and deliberately seem to ignore the elephant in the room of adult social care funding in budget debates. Secondly, about the basic unfairness of a new tax on the very least off in our society. Councils across the UK find their ability to respond to issues in the area vastly curtailed by the government's insistence on placing the burden of social care on the shoulders of council taxpayers, making it necessary for councils of all political compositions to cut back on other services to meet the increasing costs, and having to make difficult choices even who they can help within these parameters. It's no exaggeration to say that this burden is crippling councils. Some indeed have gone into serious financial difficulties, which we have avoided here, but some would have taken us down that path into getting into these kind of financial difficulties. So when Boris Johnson told us he had a solution to the problem ready to go upon his arrival in Downing Street, we waited to see what it was, and it's arrived. It's a tax on these less able to afford to pay it, designed to protect the inheritances of the most wealthy owners of property. An increase in national insurance, like the rebadging of the poll tax, for those of us that are older to remember it, as the community charge, it will be rebadged as the health and social care levy, but it remains in truth an increase in the rate of national insurance. National insurance is a regressive tax, disproportionately hitting those on low pay and those receiving universal credit whilst in work. Through the employer contribution, it is also a tax on jobs and a tax on job creation, again in disincentivising employers from creating new jobs. Not only this, but the tax is extended now to working pensioners. These again tend to be people who have limited income in retirement, living on state pension or whatever, relying on state pension, who have been low paid throughout their working lives and unable to build up a private income or pension in retirement. And as if that was not all bad enough, it's very clear that it doesn't actually solve the social care crisis anyway at all. Money will go to the NHS first to tackle the legacy both of the pandemic and of a decade of underfunding under the Tories. If there's any money left, it will go to social care. How that actually happens is a bit of a mystery at the moment, but the fact is the council tax will continue to meet the bulk of the cost of social care as it does now. So we're calling the government and the Chancellor to abandon this NI hike. Money needs to be raised by tax increases which are progressive and tax not just income but property, assets and other wealth in a much fairer way. Those with the broadest shoulders, we should all agree, should carry most of the burden. As we face cuts in universal credit, empty shelves in supermarkets, spiralling fuel prices and rising inflation, it is not the time to punish the poor and the least well off in our society. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor Kerwin?
I
Do you wish to second the motion?
Yeah, second and reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Thank you. I'll now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Brockbank?
Chair, I would like to move an amendment to the motion.
Do you have a seconder?
Seconds, Chair. Sorry.
Members may want to take a moment to read the terms of the amendment.
Chair, is it possibly we could change the colour from green to something else, because it's very difficult to read?
Do you want me to read the whole thing out? Yeah, if you could.
Interactive technology. Chair, we will, to make life easier for members, we will circulate some hard copies. And then
Has everyone had the chance to read the amendment?
no, I think it's still working its way around, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Chair, can I ask a question to the legal officer, please? Chair, does this not negate the original motion completely, because it deletes what we're asking completely and does not, it goes way far away from the original motion? I know we in the past have had motions rejected amendments rejected for a similar reason.
It does appear to negate the motion as it stands, in that the purpose of the original motion calls for the Council to call upon the Mayor to write to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to raise funds. This sidesteps that and seeks instead to write to the Prime Minister to welcome the current plan and write to the Leader of the Labour Party to ask him to support the plan. It does therefore appear to negate the intent of the original motion. And therefore, pursuant to find the rules of 12.8, it would not be a permissible amendment.
So, we go to...
So, given that it's not a permissible amendment,
To speak to the motion, yeah? To the original motion.
So to provide clarity, given that the amendment seeks to negate the original motion, it's therefore not a permissible set of text. So unless there is an alternative text that you have for an amendment, then the amendment cannot be accepted constitutionally.
In that case, I'll now invite members to speak to the original motion. Anybody wish to speak? Councillor Rankin?
Thank you, Chair. It's a shame, actually, that the amendment's fallen, because I would have been speaking to that more than speaking to the original motion. When the new funding package was trailed on Twitter, which is how the government tends to announce things these days, I was actually really quite excited by it, because Boris Johnson was finally going to fix social care. And that was on the basis, coming back to the Dilnot report in 2011, that successive governments of coalition and Conservative had just kicked things down the road. So, from the point of view of ignoring for now the regressive nature of the way that the funding will be raised, which passes the burden of to low and middle income earners disproportionately, we've looked at it from the point of view of budgets in North Tyneside, and it's not just the officers, professional officers, but also professional advisors. And what they are telling us so far is that it actually creates significant additional financial risks to this local authority. And I'll explain why. Number one, it lowers the cap. Now, that's good from the point of view of residents, but obviously it also means that North Tyneside Council has to fund more of the cap. So we have to find that additional money from somewhere. There's not a magic tree, apparently, but we have to find it. Number two, there's a thing called fee equalisation, and what this actually does is it gives people who are paying private fees the right to come to the local authority and to ask the local authority to commission their care. Now, anyone who knows the sector will know that private fee payers pay more than local authorities within nursing homes. So the equalisation of care will mean that the local authority will end up paying private fees for what they would normally be paying at the moment, local authority fees. So it actually pushes the fee scales up, which will again create an additional financial burden to the local authority. Now, from the point of view of how the funding is going to be raised, it starts in April of financial year 2022. So how much money will North Tyneside Council get from this tax rise that starts next year? How much money will it get into its coffers in financial year 2022 to plug the gaps that will already be there from ongoing pressures, plus also the funding gaps that will appear from what I've just said? How much will we get? Nothing. I'll say it to the people at the back, nothing. I'll say it to the people on the left and the right. We will receive absolutely nothing in additional funding. We have additional costs coming in already, which are there, ongoing pressures from the point of view of just the general sector, and then what this will create is new financial risks and new financial pressures, and we receive absolutely nothing. So up to financial year 2023, we have nothing. In financial year 2024, we think we will get nothing, because ministers cannot even say at what point in time that 5.6 billion will ever be dispersed into the care system. So what this is doing is creating massive new financial risks to the local authority, massive new financial cost to the local authority, and what will we get for it? Absolutely nothing. The ministers have no idea how it's going to work in practice. So what has happened is there's a tax being put in place which will regressively hit the poorest, hardest. North Tyneside Council will see absolutely nothing to support what it was supposed to support in the first place. It hasn't actually fixed social care at all. It's actually created massive new financial risks within the system. Well done, Boris Johnson.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Would anyone else? Mayor Redfern?
I think I could agree with the point that I'm delighted that actually somebody's going to do something about social care, because neither parties have been brave enough to tackle it in the past. However, I think it's really important to understand most of us can't wait till 2023 for money. Our residents are suffering now. They're not getting the care that they deserve, to be quite honest. It's not a problem that we can sit back and wait till 2023. We need that money now, to be quite honest. So yes, great in tackling it, but it's not going to answer and help the residents here who are suffering now in this time if it's left till 2023.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern.
Councillor Bell.
Councillor Bell? Gary Bell?
Thank you, Chair. As a former county member of adult social care, I would have took money off the devil because I needed it. And when I first heard of this proposal by Boris Johnson, first of all, I quite welcomed it, because I thought, well, at least he's doing something. And since 2010, Sir Andy Burnham brought his ideas forward, which the Labour Party didn't take on board, there's not been any sort of, we've been promised green papers by government, coalition and Conservative, since 2010. Nothing's happened. Labour Party, as far as I'm aware, haven't got a policy about it. I've never seen anything. There knows the conference coming up shortly. But once you look into the devil of the detail, Martin's right. The first 2 years, the money will go to NHS, 11 billion, sorry. I think 2024, social care may get some of the 6 billion. No, I listened to Simon Clark, I think his name is, a chief, just being promoted as Chief Secretary of the Treasury. He's a Northern MP. He said in the Commons that the 2.5 precept, which I believe the Conservative Party approved last year, that were against the council tax, will go ahead again, so council taxpayers will be paying the 2.5% adult social care precept. And all this will do for adult social care and for the council budget is they'll just, it's like treading water. It's just like treading water. It's not even treading water, you know, we need adult social care in this country needs to be about £6 billion and it needs it now. And when you're in government, you've got choices. That's the good thing about being in government. You can do what you want. You can have the HS2, you can spend money on whatever you want, any fancy project. But if this government was really to its metal, in the budget, he would announce a massive increase to social care. We can then go as a party, as politicians, we can discuss regional variations, because if the cap is £100,000 on care, if they say the average house price in North Tyneside is 170,000, you will lose over 50% of your estate on care. If you're not a millionaire just because you live down south and you've got houses worth 1.5 million, you're losing a tenth of your estate. So it becomes really an inheritance gain. So there's lots of, I'm glad the government's done something, but it's the wrong thing. And I think if people got together and spoke about it in the sector, and we could come back with some sort of deal which we could all accept, I think it would be a good idea. But at this moment in time, the national insurance increase is not the way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Brockbank.
Thank you, Chair. I would echo part of what Councillor Bell's just said. I think this is a long-term problem that requires a long-term solution. As a Conservative, I'm never keen on raising taxes. But I would just say, as Councillor Bell said, the Labour Party has absolutely no plan how to fix that. They haven't come forward with any plans. It's raise tax, raise tax, raise tax. There needs to be a sustainable plan for this. So as Councillor Rankin rather sarcastically said, well done, Boris, I would say well done, Boris. At least he's had a go at trying to fix it. Where's Keir? Where's Comrade Corbyn and all the rest of them? I would just say, though, that the need here is far beyond one political ideology. As Councillor Bell says, it's going to take cool heads and a cool approach to it. Blaming the government for everything, blaming local authorities for everything is not the way forward. There needs to be a consensus built, because this is a really, really important issue. And if people seek to make this political, then they really ought to be ashamed of themselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brockbank. Councillor Kerwin.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to stop calling this a plan. The government does not have a plan. This is a tax hike, not a plan. I'd like to reassure Councillor Bell that the Labour Party does have a plan. It's been set out at the minute by Liz Kendall, who was talking about our 10-year plan using a wealth tax that actually works with the social care sector, works with frontline workers, works with residents to actually change social care, because putting money into it just won't fix the problem. And the money raised by this tax hike wouldn't fix the problem anyway, regardless of the additional costs that Councillor Rankin eloquently outlined. And if we have to wait 3 years for this money to begin with, this is recognising that actually they're not going to do anything. It's like saying to someone, oh, your roof's leaking, that's terrible, you know, we're going to do something about that. I'll come and see you in 3 years' time. And then when they turn up, they only bring a bucket, because they're actually not coming to fix the problem. They're putting a plaster on it that's kicking the can down the road. I think all the parties should get together and discuss this. It's what we proposed in 2010, it's what we proposed in 2015, it's what we proposed in 2017, and it's what we proposed in 2019. But people do play political footballs with it. So this isn't a plan, It's a tax hike that won't fix the problem. And I will end by saying I completely agree with the Conservative chair of the Health and Social Care Select Committee that said this is an absolute disaster for social care, because now people can pretend like they've done something. They can pretend like the problem's solved, and they can kick it down the road for another 10 years.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No? Councillor Samuel, would you like to exercise your right to reply?
Very briefly. I mean, I think most of the points have been made, particularly in Councillor Rankin's contribution. So I just want to point out that the law of unintended consequences in this. One thing I didn't actually mention in my opening remarks was that I was reading today that for the extra money that the NHS will receive from this plan, it will immediately need to hand, in the NHS and social care sector, they will need immediately to hand back 900 million, because that will be the increase in the employers' NI contributions, which just gives you an inkling of just how badly thought this out. I don't think there's any credit in any political party over the last 20 years or so to actually bring in something forward, but this is not the answer. This just makes things 100 times worse and just makes the situation for local authorities much worse than it is at the moment, which is why this particular plan ought to be rejected. Thank you, Chair.
If no one else wishes to speak, we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Okay, so that's 43, Chair.
And those against?
And that's 7, Chair.
We now go to motion 4. Can I invite Councillor Hannah Johnson to move the motion?
Thank you, Chair. You know, it's interesting actually hearing that debate just on social care there, because I think a lot of the kind of disregard for working people that we saw during that debate from the government around social care can also be seen in the changes to universal credit. So, obviously, I think we need to recognise that the government did obviously increase universal credit by £20 at the start of the pandemic, which was welcomed by some of our poorest, most vulnerable residents. However, that is starting to change. In Churton, which is the ward that I represent, there are over 2,100 people that claim universal credit, of which 750 are in work. So this isn't, we're not talking about people here who I'm sure the Tory party would like to characterise as lazy, not looking for work, that kind of thing. We are talking about people who are in work. Combined with the pandemic and inflation and incomes not rising in the way that they should have done compared to prices, this is a callous way to treat people who are already struggling to afford the basics like heating and food. And I think as well of myself as a teacher of some of the kids at school, potentially because of this £20, losing out on this £20 a week, not being able to afford things as basic as clothes and food when they go home. It's already been an incredibly chaotic process bringing in universal credit, and this decrease in going back to the kind of original amount is a step too far for residents in North Tyneside, and particularly for residents in my ward of Churton and in the ward of Riverside, which are the two wards that have the highest claimants. For me, I would say that it's not morally defensible to do this. And it's not simply about working more, like Teresa Cobb said, because these are people who are in work. So I would ask that the council back this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Formerly second chair, reserve the right to speak.
I now invite members to speak to the motion. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support this motion. I've said many times about my childhood, growing up in poverty, and I see the government's attempt to remove the £20 uplift as just cruel and barbaric, and that's from my own experience growing up in poverty. I think we have to understand exactly what's going on in the wider country. Just recently, energy prices have spiralled. Gas prices have surged, meaning that family budgets are being squeezed. The Government Minister, Paul Scully, recently told the ITV News that because of the UK energy prices, 9 providers will fold and approximately 1.5 million customers will be moved onto new, more likely expensive contracts. And this will present a challenge, and added that for many, this winter was going to be incredibly difficult. As well as energy prices, the cost of everyday items have also increased. Shortages in the food sector, as well as shortages of HGV drivers, has resulted in spiralling food costs. The boss of Tesco said that shoppers can expect to face around 5% increases in costs, and according to the OECD, we're going to have the highest rate of inflation of all advanced economies. In this perfect storm of price rises, the government's plans to remove £20 uplift in universal credit does appear to be barbaric and cruel, and a policy lacking of compassion. It's been criticised by many people, both left and right. Ian Duncan-Smith, for example, has been very critical, but I believe Gordon Brown said it best when he said, "I've never seen a government act so callously and with so little concern for the consequences of their action on the poorest in our society." I fail to see personally how any politician, national or local, with any sense of decency and compassion could agree with the government's decision to remove the £20 uplift. And so I hope everybody in this chamber will vote in favour of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Peter Earley.
Thank you, Chair. The government's plans to cut the £20 uplift to universal credit will have a drastic effect on families across the North East and in particular in North Tyneside. A recent study by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that families with children will be disproportionately impacted by the proposed cut. That nationally, 500,000 people will be pushed into poverty, including 200,000 children. That the cut will impact 46% of children across the North East, the joint highest number in the country, together with Yorkshire and Humberside. For North Tyneside, 18,150 households, 21%, are in receipt of either universal credit or working families tax credit. Of these, 9,720, 40% of those households have children. In other words, 40% of all families in North Tyneside with children will be adversely affected by this cut. Moreover, the DWP's own figures show that people in receipt of universal credit across North Tyneside, 38% are in work and a further 23% are not able or required to work. In other words, 61% of people in North Tyneside in receipt of universal credit are either already in work or not currently able to work. And obviously 100% of those in receipt of working families tax credit are obviously in work. Given that there are 18,150 households in North Tyneside in receipt of either universal credit or working tax credit, that cut equates to £370,200 being taken out of the local economy every week. This will happen almost overnight, and that will equate to nearly 20 million a year from our local economy. Despite the recent ill-informed comments by the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, it is estimated that those in work would have to work on average an extra 7 to 10 hours per week to earn the equivalent of the £20 cut. That this cut would take effect at the time of soaring inflation and increases to both food and energy costs suggests, as Gordon Brown said, that far from levelling up, the government is intent on doubling down in its attacks on the vulnerable and working poor. What this cut demonstrates is that when it comes to those in poverty, the Tories are ruthless, clueless and heartless. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Earley. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this motion, and like my colleagues, I hope everyone in the chamber can also support the motion. I think when the government introduced this increase, it was in recognition that social security levels were totally inadequate to support people in a crisis situation. And that is supposed to be the purpose of our social security system. Any one of us could find ourselves in a time of crisis, and that's supposed to be there to offer us protection. So the government recognised that it was woefully inadequate, and in fact, the level of social security is at an all-time low, I think, since welfare system was introduced. I believe there would never be a right time to remove the £20 uplift. I definitely think as we hopefully emerge from this pandemic, it's definitely not the right time to even talk about removing this uplift. I have real fears that we've not seen the full impact of the pandemic. It's definitely going to be a long-term process, and people are going to be dealing with the impact of this for a long time to come. And I agree with Councillor Early here. I think the government talk about levelling up in the context of cutting this very important lifeline for our residents is nothing more than rhetoric and a popular catchphrase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Thurloway.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure everyone here remembers last year when Boris Johnson stood outside 10 Downing Street and clapped key workers. I'm sure everyone remembers that week after week. Where's Boris Johnson now? These are the same key workers who are being penalised. Where's Boris Johnson?
Councillor Rankin.
Thank you, Chair. It was unfortunate that the party opposite was not able to support the amendment on Afghan refugees because it asked their government to do something and to think again. This motion does the same. It asks their government to think again. The Afghan refugee situation, countless Conservative MPs also asked their government to think again. And on this motion here, countless Conservative MPs are asking their government to think again. So I would love to think that you would actually unanimously vote this through rather than abstain, which is refusing to support it, or to vote against it, which is effectively voting to tip a huge swathe of North Tyneside residents into poverty, literally immediately in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. Anybody else? Mayor Redfern.
If some of the folks who think this is a good thing to take the £20 a week away from these people who are suffering, it would be nice to see them go into those areas where many, many people are making decisions about whether they can feed their children or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. Universal credit is a tailored, progressive form of welfare, and it has been applauded internationally for that progressive nature. It targets help at those who need it the most, and the £20 uplift that was introduced throughout the pandemic was a blanket approach to that help. That money was not targeted at those people who needed it the most. It was a blanket approach to everyone who's on universal credit. Now, what we see from the party opposite is, no, don't reduce spending on this. No, don't reduce spending on this. Yes, we need more spending on this. But we've seen in the last motion, they are not willing to accept any kind of tax rises across the board. And it's no wonder that they have been out of power for 12 years now, because their economic illiteracy hasn't changed in 11 years. What all we see is spend more, tax less, with no plan of how to pay for it. The Labour Chief Secretary to the Treasury, as he left the Treasury in 2010, said there is no money. And if the Labour Party opposite continue as they are, there will be even less money than there was then. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Kerwin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if someone could help me with my economic illiteracy, because a tailored approach would assume that you don't take it off everyone, but clearly I just don't understand the issue.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. It just seems that we have plenty of money to give private firms 37 billion on PPE, but we can't use. We can't help people who are really in need and suffering. I just find it ironic that it's just certain people who deserve to get the money and not the most needy.
Councillor Bell, Gary Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got friends, the whole political spectrum, and Conservatives, good Conservatives, who I work with, and they are very unhappy with this. And it's a £6 billion hit. I just said in my last comments, when you're in government, you can make choices. We have borrowed 400 billion for the pandemic. I understand that, and there's borrowing requirements, but 6 billion can be found. I think that a lot of Conservatives are not happy with it. They know that it's not going to go down well in certain areas, especially the Red Wall. And with the national insurance, because I know these guys don't want to raise taxes, they might defend it, but the national insurance as well. These aren't Conservative policies. So there's a lot of unease in the Conservatives, and the ones I speak to aren't all raising Ebenezer screws. They don't care, but they think this is a wrong move. They think it either should be tailored to come down to 15, 10, and then, or given to those in most need. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson? Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think we'll take no lessons in economic literacy for the government, as we've seen the biggest increase in our national debt in history. We are giving the Conservative councillors a chance to do the right thing, stand up to the Prime Minister and defend our residents from this devastating cut. This £20 a week is what enables some families to put food on the table at the end of the week. Locally in North Tyneside, as Councillor Early said, over 18,000 households are either on universal credit or working tax credit. This cut would take £20 million out of the local economy overnight. We know what that extra £20 a week is spent on our shops and our high streets. Taking that money out of our economy when the economic recovery is not fully established is simply robbing Peter to pay Paul. Nearly half of universal credit claimants are in work. 2.5 million people in work are set to face a double whammy of universal tax cuts and tax rises. Making the biggest ever overnight cut to Social Security will be wrong for families and wrong for the economy. It's shameful, as Councillor Furloway said, that the very workers who got us through this crisis are in the firing line for a £1,000 a year cut at least to their income. Nationally, over 700,000 people will be pushed into poverty, and that's 300,000 children pushed into child poverty further. A report recently by the Work and Pensions Select Committee found the government had no plan to tackle child poverty, which is abundantly clear by the withdrawal of universal credit, as this would be the first thing they would keep if they had any type of plan. There is now near universal opposition to these plans. Labour, the public, the House of Commons, dozens of charities and campaign groups, and now people I don't normally have much time for, but the 6 predecessors as Conservative Work and Pensions Secretary of State all agree that this money must remain in place. All councillors across this chamber must do the right thing, stand up for our residents and call for the cut to be cancelled and the uplift to be made permanent.
Yes, thank you. I support all of the points my colleagues have made tonight, and I just really wanted to add the long-term impact of this cut on people's physical and mental health will be absolutely devastating. And we haven't, looked at the cost of that alongside meeting the poorest people, families' most basic needs.
Councillor Thirlaway?
No, I think if we're going to talk about financial...
Sorry, Councillor Thirlaway, you can't come back.
That's fine, that's fine. I'll tell you later.
It's on.
No, I've just turned it
It's on now. Can I now...
Hannah Johnson, yeah.
Yes. Councillor Hannah Johnson, would you like the right of reply?
Thank you. Yes, I would just like to thank my colleagues as well for backing this motion. We said already, but Councillor Burns obviously talking about economic literacy. I don't see any economic literacy in this whatsoever. I think it's callous. It's not morally defensible, like we've heard, and it hits some of the poorest people in North Tyneside, so I would ask every councillor in the chamber to back this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour?
So, again, that's 43, Chair.
And those against?
That's 8, Chair. So that's 8, so the motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you. We now go to item 6, our North Tyneside plan. This report seeks Council's approval of an updated Our North Tyneside Council plan in light of the findings from engagement with residents and other key stakeholders. This engagement was undertaken in accordance with the approach agreed by Cabinet on 28th of June 2021. Can I ask that Councillor Carl Johnson to remove the report?
Thank you, Chair. As agreed at Cabinet on the 28th of June 2021, public engagement has been completed proposals for an updated Our North Tyneside Plan 21 to 25. The engagement process involved residents, staff, other key stakeholders, including the Overview and Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee. A higher number of responses were received in the previous years, and the feedback shows that the vast majority of participants agree the Our North Council plan priorities are the right ones to enable us to work with our partners and residents to build a better North Tyneside. Nevertheless, as a listening council, we are also happy to adjust the wording in the plan in light of feedback received. The plan presented tonight will allow the council to deliver on the Mayor and Labour Group's key priorities, building a thriving, family-friendly, green, caring and secure North Tyneside. These priorities include regenerating the high streets of North Shields, Wallsend and Wilty Bay with town centre master plans, and the northwest of the borough in general. Good quality jobs in North Tyneside, keeping our libraries open, adult education and being an award-winning destination for visitors of choice. We'll support our local schools to make sure all children have quality education. We'll continue our outstanding children's services and we'll ensure children are ready for school. We'll provide great care to all who need it. We'll work with the care provision sector to improve the working conditions of our care workers. We'll support the local community groups, carers in every essential work they do, and we'll work to reduce the inequality and limit discrimination to ensure the social rights of people in North Tyneside are key to council decision making. Work with our wardens in partnership with Norway Police to prevent and tackle all forms of antisocial behaviour. We'll invest an additional £2 million per year into roads and pavements. We'll maintain council tax support scheme that cuts the bills for the thousands of low incomes across North Tyneside. We'll provide 5,000 affordable homes. We'll tackle health and socio-economic inequalities from the borough, tackling poverty for our Poverty Intervention Fund. And finally, with a green North Tyneside, we'll keep increasing the amount of waste that can be recycled. We'll continue with our environmental hit squads and crack down on littering. We'll secure funding to help low-income households install low-carbon heating. And finally, and I'm delighted to say, I'm sure Councillor Graham will have something to say in a moment, we'll make sure North Tyneside is carbon net zero by 2030. Thanks, Chair. So, and doing that, therefore, I recommend Council's agreement to our refreshed North Tyneside Council plan as set out in Appendix 1 of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do you have a seconder?
I should certainly second it, yes.
Thank you, Mayor Redford. Councillor Arkley?
Yes, I would like to ask on page 15, the Green North Tyneside, we will keep increasing the amount of waste that can be recycled and introduce food waste collection and deposit return schemes. Can you explain that to us fully and what that means and whether or not we will be financially supported for that?
Thank you, Chair. So increasing the amount of waste that can be recycled, as we work with different providers to try and increase the amount of waste we can recycle all the time, we'll continue to do that. It's actually our government that are wanting to introduce food waste collections and deposit return schemes. They haven't said they're going to fund it for us or not, so no doubt we'll end up having to fund it ourselves, but we're absolutely committed to ensuring food waste collection can happen and deposit return schemes can happen in this borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any more questions? No? They'll now invite... Sorry, Councillor Arkley, didn't
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that because you're not telling me what it is. Are you collecting food or deposit return schemes? I'm just trying to work out what that is about. I hope you don't mind me asking, but...
So many councils in this country have food waste collection. So they have a bin where you will, instead of putting your waste in your food waste in your general bin, you'll put it in that bin and that will be collected at the curbside as is your other waste in this country. Deposit return schemes, you might have seen them across Europe. It involves paying a deposit for a plastic bottle, a glass bottle, whatever bottle that you get your drink in. And then when you return that, you get your deposit back. It's part of the plan to ensure that the producers of all of this waste are the payers rather than the consumers as we currently are.
Sorry, we're reminiscing. Are there any more questions? No? I'll now invite members to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to support this council plan, as you might understand, especially given my priorities for climate change agenda, which affect us all. And it's really a clear and ambitious plan which accompanies this to reduce our carbon footprint by an ambitious 2030. And I'm delighted to play my part and need every councillor to get on board and help with the messaging on this so our residents can be well informed and know what they can and can't do. There is a great deal to do across all services and businesses, but not least in providing our residents with support and information to help everyone to make all of these small changes that add up to big changes and capturing more carbon. We will be publishing an action plan, and we will be publishing a national investment plan. And as an authority, we will lead on this. We have no alternative for the future and health and prosperity of North Tyneside. And I hope everybody will be on board with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I also fully support this council plan. I'm absolutely delighted that we have made a very clear commitment within the plan to tackle long-standing inequalities in North Tyneside, and I think this is an issue that cross-cuts all service areas within the council and indeed services delivered by our wider partners. We know that the pandemic has had a huge impact and affected the daily lives of everyone in the borough. There have been multiple impacts on our communities, both directly from the disease and mortality, but also indirectly from the response to the pandemic and the controls that have been put in place. The direct and indirect impact has increased inequality in our borough. It has hit hardest on those least able to cope. It's widened the inequalities gap that was present before the pandemic actually hit. And whilst inequalities impact in very complex and often accumulative ways, there's a clear link and relationship between a person's socio-economic position and the health and likely premature death. So, for example, there's currently an 11-year gap on average life expectancy between the most and the least deprived areas within North Tyneside, and that, for me, doesn't feel fair or just. Inequalities arise for a number of reasons, but it's primarily around the conditions in which we are born, which we grow, live, work, and age, what's known as the socio-economic determinants of health. And any strategy to tackle inequalities needs to take account of all of this, so it is a huge challenge. I'm very proud to be leading the work to develop a clear strategy and action plan for North Tyneside to tackle these wider socio-economic determinants of health through the Health and Wellbeing Board. Our approach will be evidence-based, grounded in best practice. We'll tackle the realities in North Tyneside, where we know that for some people, life is extremely difficult. We are determined to tackle inequalities in partnership with our residents and our communities, and an overarching engagement process will take place throughout October to support the development of this work and ensure that this approach is shaped and influenced by a wide range of stakeholders, including residents and people with lived experience of inequalities. In November, the Health and Wellbeing Board will be approving the new Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy with this focus upon tackling the wider socio-economic determinants. This will be shaped in part through this year's State of the Area event, which takes place in October. Workshops will focus on the 6 key policy areas, what have become known as the Marmot Principles, based on the work of Sir Michael Marmot, who's Professor and Director of University College London Institute of Health Equity. The strategy will need to be far-reaching, it will need to be well-coordinated, it will need to be delivered in partnership and have targeted actions to focus on those who most need help and support. The strategy work will then be followed up by a development of a detailed action plan, so we're clear about what we'll do and what success will look like. Tackling poverty will continue to be a key focus within this work. We'll build upon the many good examples of work already in place to support our residents on low income. I'm very proud that this administration has prioritised allocating funds to our fantastic and innovative Poverty Intervention Fund. Over £1.3 million has been allocated to support those in greatest need in our borough. It's made a real difference to families, children and older people. Initiatives have included children's access to food vouchers during the school holidays, support for school uniform costs and poverty-proofing the school day, also benefit take-up for our older residents who are often reluctant to get the financial support they deserve. Going forward, we're fully committed to building upon the strong foundations already in place and the great work going on, working closely with our residents, multi-agency partners and stakeholders to tackle the socio-economic determinants of health in our borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Mayor Redfern?
Well, as you can imagine, I'm about to support it, aren't I, to be quite honest. But I just want to assure you people that here in the council, all councils have statutory duties to carry out. But this plan also is based around the concerns of our residents. And I'll stand proudly with all of you because much of what's in here is what the residents have been telling us when we've been out talking to them, door knocking and having conversations in various groups across the borough. So all I'm going to say to you, I have no doubt at the end of the day, this will make a difference to our residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Anyone else? Councillor Rankin, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I support this plan. It's the new administration's way of setting out its vision for the future of North Tyneside. I'm reminded of a letter which floated around on social media, a very generous letter from George Bush to Bill Clinton as the incoming President of the United States, which said, "Your success is our country's success." And from the point of view of this plan, the success of the plan here is our borough's success. We all are elected and we all have a vested interest in having a cleaner, greener, safer and more culturally vibrant and prosperous North Tyneside because it betters our residents' lives. So again, I will ask for a unanimous vote on this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rankin. I don't think there's anyone else, so Councillor Johnson, would you like to exercise your right to reply?
Thank my colleagues for their contributions, really good contributions, so moves the vote, Chair.
In that case, we'll go straight to the vote. Those in favour?
43, Chair.
And those against?
That's none, Chair. That will be 8 abstentions.
I'll remember to put it on. Item 7, Chair's announcements. In the absence of Councillor Drummond, who is unwell, Councillor Linda Dark and myself, Linda kindly acted as my consort, that's the right word, yeah, on Saturday, and we had a lovely time dispensing dancing medals at Marden Resident Centre for some very, very excited children. They were delightful, but they were excited. And on Sunday, I had the privilege of laying a wreath at the Moore Memorial at the Links in honour of the Battle of Britain, which of course took place in September 1940. And that's it from me. Thank you.
I do. Thank you very much, Chair. I would like to start by saying how delighted I was to learn that our Youth Justice Service has been rated outstanding by government inspectors. How about that? Some positive things that are happening in the North Tyneside. This means that we are the only second council in the country to be rated so highly. The council has now been judged outstanding for both social care and the Youth Justice Service. And I'm sure you'll agree that is great news for North Tyneside. The report published by the HM Inspectors of Probation praised the service for the work it does to support children from age 10 to 18. And I have to tell you that they received a glowing report. In addition to this, one of our officers, Justin Laidlaw, who works for our Youth Justice Service, has received a police recommendation for his work. They said that his actions and influence on the young people have been inspirational and life-changing. Well done to Justin. We have some amazing staff, I can tell you. And then this week, would you believe, our children's services have won this national, I don't want to break it, this national award. Fantastic. Out of many, many entrants, they have been awarded the Workforce Transformation Award as part of the Municipal Journal Achievements. Fantastic. We should all be very, very proud of our children's services here in North Tyneside. And it must be very reassuring to our residents when they live in North Tyneside, that have a fantastic council who takes great, great care of our young people. I would just like to say too, that during the summer holidays, we ran a very, very excellent program for our young people. They were able to join a program of activities designed to help them to be healthy and active. And of course, fair dues, it was backed by the Department of Education. However, our officers ran a fantastic, fantastic summer of activities, where they could have free activities. They included a healthy meal to contribute to a balanced diet. There was a wide range of activities, both indoor and outdoor. They all had a fantastic time. Nearly 1,400 children accessed the sessions. The feedback so far has been really positive from our parents and carers, and they were delighted to tell me that their children were so eager to get out again and meet people, and the fact that they enjoyed their activities, but more importantly, they'd met lots of new friends, which is fantastic. One of the things that I would just like to really assure our residents that we are well aware, and have been for some time, of the condition of our roads and pavements. And I know, as you all know, it's a great concern to our residents, because we go out and talk to the residents and knock on doors and want to talk about roads and pavements. And although this is a priority for our residents, I have to assure you that when I came in 2009, right, the budget that time I inherited was for 1 million. And we immediately increased it to 2 million. And since then, we have actually put 16 million pounds into getting improvements in our roads and pavements. So I'm quite proud of that too. And despite the fact that this year we got a cut of 30% by the government, we continue to input 2 million pounds, and we'll continue to do that to help get rid of those horrible potholes that are around the borough. I just wish we had millions of pounds to do it now, but can assure our residents that we are attending to their concerns. Also, a grand opportunity, a grand evening, a grand sort of event was held by our BAME residents, our BAME task group. They actually had a multicultural event on Saturday the 4th of September in Northumberland Square. It was attended by lots and lots of people, but more importantly, it was organised by our BAME residents, to be quite honest. It was joyous, it was colourful, and it was a real community event, attended by lots of families and small children. That was the first one North Tyneside has ever had, but it won't be the last, I can assure you, to be quite honest. We'll go back to our BAME residents and ask us to help to put on next year's too. I just want to say one thing, and I hope you can join me on this, right? I can't conclude, right, because I know I'm very excited about all the positive stuff. We hear about negative stuff, but there's a lot of positive stuff going on in this council. And I just want to conclude this evening and take the opportunity to thank Dave Brown. Dave Brown is retiring. And I certainly wish him well. I just want to tell you, he's an amazing, fantastic, loyal officer, to be quite honest.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't expect that.
I know you didn't.
Having been born in North Shields and been a resident of North Tyneside for most of my life, I've been very proud to serve the council. So I wish you all the best for the future. I'll certainly be watching on with interest.
David, you have been truly amazing. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. And I just would like to say, you know, all the negative stuff, we've had a lot of positive stuff about our fantastic staff in North Tynes this evening. And at the end of the day, Labour isn't doing too badly in North Tyneside, are they? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Redfern. Now come to item 9, questions by members of the council. 3 valid questions have been received from members of the council. Question 1. Councillor Clark, do you want to ask your question or have it taken as read?
I'll ask the question, thank you, Chair. The Social Metrics Commission reported that 4.5 million people are experiencing the deepest levels of poverty in the UK. Can the Mayor confirm North Tyneside Council fully supports the North of Tyne Poverty Truth Commission?
Councillor Johnson, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm answering that for the Mayor. I think, first of all, it's absolutely shocking that 4.5 million people are experiencing the deepest levels of poverty in this country. One of the proudest things the last Labour government did was take millions of children out of poverty, and it's one of our proudest records. I'm sure working with our North Tyne Cabinet colleagues and officers team, though, we are proud to be developing the North Tyne Poverty Commission, and of course, myself and Mayor Redfern will be doing everything we can to support it at North Tyne. Here in North Tyneside, we work hard to support our residents who are living in poverty or are struggling with daily living costs. One of our most recent policy decisions was the Poverty Invention Fund, to provide practical help to alleviate the financial, health and social impacts of poverty on our residents. As members know, we started this project by listening to a range of people to ensure that we were developing what would make the biggest impact on those living in poverty. The project's funded will range from supporting children and families with school clothing to working out our older residents ensure they have access to the benefits they are entitled to. The fund is also supporting all of our schools to go through the poverty proofing the school day to try and make sure no child is disadvantaged when going to school. In total, the project so far has helped over 5,000 families. But you know, we also worry about the impact of the pandemic and inequalities in the borough. That's why the Mayor's Manifesto and our new council plan commits to tackling those inequalities. Our new health and wellbeing strategy, which will look at what we know about inequality in the borough and add to what we've learned about the impact of the pandemic on the most vulnerable in the borough. We know it's widening the gap and we have to act. We're using the Marmot policy objectives to shape our work so that we know our approach is rooted in the evidence of what works. And we also know that we need help from all of our partners. That's why the State of the Area event this year is an opportunity to talk to our residents, our partners from the developing community sector, businesses and other public bodies about inequalities in the borough and what they think we should be doing about them. All the work going on in North Tyneside shows why we're supporting the inclusion of stakeholders in these key conversations as at the heart of what we are doing. So we support the North Tyne Poverty Truth Commission's work.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Clark, do you want to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, please, Chair. We know North Tyneside Council is fully committed to reducing poverty and inequalities. Will the Mayor ensure North Tyneside Council assist the Poverty Truth Commission in hearing from as many of our residents as possible?
Councillor Johnson, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. Of course, as we've already said, we've undertaken a lot of work to involve our residents in the development of our policies, and particularly in reducing poverty and inequalities. I am confident that our officers will work closely with Children North East, who are awarded the contract to run the Poverty Truth Commission, to ensure that as many of our residents as possible given the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Question 2. Councillor Newman, do you want to ask your question or have it taken as read?
Chair, in light of the amendment to motion 1, I'll take it as read.
Okay. Elected Mayor, would you respond, please?
I welcome your concerns regarding the current tragic situation in Afghanistan, Councillor. As a council with a proud tradition of supporting people who have been displaced and dispossessed, we have pledged to do whatever we can to support the government's Afghan resettlement scheme. The scheme is being managed by the Home Office and the North East Migration Partnership, and I have instructed our officers to work with them, and they will coordinate our response to support families that are allocated homes in North Tyneside. We are working to identify suitable homes for 3 families. I therefore feel I do not need to write to the Home Secretary, as we are engaging direct to the government through NEP, which is the migration partnership run by the government. For the families who arrive from Afghanistan, we will work with our partners and council colleagues to ensure a wider package of support, and we'll ensure it is in place. So with our help, they can settle here quickly, as soon as possible and have access to our local services. I think it's difficult to imagine how traumatic it must be to leave everything behind and seek refuge in a country almost 4,000 miles away. It is vitally important that these people are treated with kindness and compassion wherever they are and wherever they are resettled in this world. But I'm confident they will find that here in North Tyneside, Councillor. We will ensure that.
Thank you, Mayor Edford. Councillor Newman, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
No, Chair. I believe with amendment being passed on motion 1, all supplementary would have been covered.
Point of order, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Point of order.
We'll now go on to question.
Point of order. The Mayor said in her answer that she had instructed officers, and we were under the impression that the legal opinion was that the Mayor and councillors could not instruct officers.
I didn't hear that part of the Mayor's answer. I'm sorry.
And I didn't hear it either.
I'm sure we can review that.
Pardon?
I'm sure we can go back and review what was said. But
I'm not sure when I said it. Would I say instructed?
Instruct the officers.
Instruct the officers, right. I'm not allowed to do that. But
Okay,
I ensure that the officers and myself and our Cabinet work together to ensure that we provide the best provision for everyone in the borough. Thank you.
Question 3. Councillor Arkley, would you like to ask your question or have it taken as read?
Yes, I'll ask the question. Okay. The Cabinet approved an ambitious plan to transform North Shields and the Fish Quay on Monday the 25th of January 2002. It outlined, 2001. 2021, I'll start again, I'm sorry. It outlined 8 separate projects for the town centre and Fish Quay. These include enhancing the appearance of key areas, creating a new transport hub, an interchange and town square to host various events. A new cultural quarter based around Howard Street and Riverside Walkway linking the town centre to the Fish Quay. There are also proposals for high quality housing at key locations and moving the North Shields ferry to Western Quay. Cabinet approved the next stops to refining a delivery plan for the master plan, which will set out the timing and funding for the projects contained in the master plan. Progress the delivery of those schemes contained in the master plan for which there is funding and which it has been secured. Securing external funding for those elements of the master plan for which funding is not currently in place. Would the elected Mayor provide the Council with an update on all aspects of the North Shields master plan? Would she also provide a financial breakdown of all grants, funding, sales, investments received, and is there a shortfall of funding for the North Shields master plan? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arkley. Councillor Carl Johnson, would you respond, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm generally grateful for the question and the opportunity to share with members the great progress we and partners are making in delivering our master plan for North Shields. The regeneration of the town centre is a priority for the Council, and given changing nature of retail and trends in the UK, which have been exacerbated by COVID-19 pandemic. North Shields master plan for a series of projects will have a significant impact on the appearance and economic activity in the town by providing an enhanced visitor experience. The master plan will also create a right environment for private sector investment in properties and businesses, as well as giving confidence to funding partners. Of the council-led elements of the master plan, the authority has committed over £4 million to the programme. We also expect to secure in the region of £42 million for external funding to deliver projects identified either directly by the authority or with our partners. There are further funding bids in development, including proposals for the development of the cultural quarter. Overall, the master plan includes 8 projects, 7 of which are underway or being designed. So far, we've made excellent progress and invested over 5.5 million in delivering some key schemes that have already made significant impact on the town centre. We have successfully brought the former council offices in Northumberland Square back to life as high-quality family housing. This has seen the refurbishment of the listed Georgian buildings as well as new build housing, bringing in new residents to live in the town centre, which will help support local shops and services. Building on the success, we've also acquired and demolished Unicorn House, an unattractive and vacant office building, and we're now ready to build new family homes and continue to bring people to live in the town centre. Shortly, we'll start work on a new multi-million-pound investment in Northumberland Square and Habit Street. This will, in partnership with Historic England, create attractive pedestrian areas and will reduce the dominance of vehicles in the town centre. It will enhance the visitor experience and will create opportunities for outdoor seating to help develop the town's growing leisure economy. The wooden doll has been restored and returned to Northumberland Square, and improving how people move in and around the town, creating safe, accessible routes for visitors, also forms part of the master plan. We are currently finalising the plans to develop a new transport hub, which will provide better facilities, and the master plan also includes a new town square, creating an exciting space for the town centres and such as markets and performances. I hope colleagues will join me in recognising the progress made to date in delivering the answers to the master plan. However, in order to do this work justice, rather than reading out a long list of funding in council, I'll provide a note for all members.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Arkley, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Yes, I would. Obviously, you know, there's been a lot of work over the last 15, 20 years in North Shields by all parties, I'll put it that way. But it's an aspirational move, and some things have been, you know, put in place at the moment. But basically, what I wanted to know was, as many people don't seem to understand what they, you know, what we're actually doing, what the council are actually doing in North Shields and how that is having an effect on them. And from my point of view, I wondered if the Mayor would consider if she would have a working group for the councillors in Preston, Tynemouth, Riverside and in Churton, who could actually work alongside, know what's going on and give that information out to the residents. That's what I'm asking. And clearly there's a lot of money still, you know, bound to come into the council. We haven't got it yet, and I'm just trying to put it into some order that we can be in a position of being knowledgeable and giving that information to residents who live in North Shields.
Thank you.
Certainly, thank you very much. I was just, is it all right if I speak, Chair?
It certainly is.
Thank you very much. The Cabinet Member for Regeneration is there, to be quite honest, and we've never tried to be secret, actually, Councillor Arkley, about anything we've done. So we've always been very open and gone out and consulted. So I'm sure the Cabinet Member for Regeneration will take that on board.
Absolutely.
It's up to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We had wide-ranging consultation with board members and with residents in North Shields ahead of our master plan being produced. We altered elements of our master plan on the basis of the consultation with residents. Residents being engaged all the way throughout this process and will continue to be engaged. Ward members will continue to be engaged as well. The master plan is there for everyone to see. It's a great plan for North Shields. It is coming together now slowly, and we'll consider the request.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. That concludes business for this evening, and I would like to thank you all very much for your attendance.